Across the street, two colleagues from FAO. So they'll be talking about SDMX-based modernization at FAO. So Danielle, Luke, the floor is yours. Is it?
Yeah, it's on. It's on. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to the organizer, the community, and the Bank of Italy for the invitation. We are here with Daniele on behalf of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. And we will share with you how FAO is modernizing its dissemination system using SDMX by combining modeling and automation to create a smooth and consistent approach across very diverse domains. So FAO is now currently undertaking a very large data migration and harmonization project to implement and to move toward an SDMX native dissemination platform using .stat suite that you have here a lot today. And the main challenges FAO is facing is that it's operating in a multi-domain environment where you have some domains that are almost in SDMX and other that are non in SDMX with a variety of structure. And that's create also a level of complexity as you also have domains that require high dimensionality, other that need long classification, and other that can be classified as a more lightweight. And sorry, but despite these differences, there were three non-negotiable core requirements for the project. First of all, the consistency, the semantic consistency on the code and the concept across the domain. Secondly, the automation, where we needed to rid off as much as possible of any manual workflow. And lastly, the traceability. We should be able to track any data point from the source with a clear log and version control. And this is aligned with the FAO statistic and data quality assurance framework. So to respond to that, we build a dual approach that work together, where on one side we use it SDMX modeling to provide the consistency, but with still enough flexibility to adapt to each domain. And on the other side, we created an automatic SDMX pipeline that will get the raw input data into a validated SDMX ready for dissemination. And the key principle of this integration and of this tandem is that the model will come first and will define the structural rules, and the pipeline will personalize them in a reliable way to ensure that the updates are consistent and automatic. And on the modeling principle, we also follow few guiding principles. So first of all, we use a centralized system on the code and concept to have a consistency across the domain. But we also use a modular design approach to capture the specificity of each domain and their requirements. So for instance, for the SDG, we use one single DSD that align with the UNSD and that improve the reporting to UNSD. And this DSD is very horizontal with many dimensions and with different data flow linked to the structure. For the fishery, we needed to kept the long hierarchical classification in order to capture the detail of the sector. So we adopted a more vertical structure with longer dimension. And for the other domain that were, for most of them, that were already present in the current dissemination system, thanks to their current structure, we could we could adopt a more lightweight DSD. Sorry. The third point is that we also align with the FAO dissemination standard when we were applying the modeling, so on the metadata, the unit of measure, and the observation status. And the standard is already SDMX compliant and bring it and it will ensure harmonization across the different domains. And lastly, we also made sure that the structure worked both for the humans with clear labels and the machine with consistent codes to avoid to have a multiplication on the mapping that will be used for the pipeline. So speaking about pipeline, I will now give the floor to Daniele that will provide more detail.
Thank you. Now I will just guide you briefly over the pipeline. And of course, the first step is the reception of the data, which can come from different sources and be in different formats. And the very first thing we do with this data is to turn it into SDMX data with minimal manipulation. This manipulation is done through custom code. And then, starting from this source data in SDMX format, we apply a series of SDMX transformations when it is possible, and custom transformations when SDMX transformations are not expressive enough. And all this leads us to get our data into our legacy dissemination structure, which we need because it's the format that data owners know very well. And it's also very useful for us to track the data and to see if the pipeline complies with the current data in FAO. And the last step is to map this data from this legacy format to the new dissemination format, which is SDMX native. And SDMX 3.0 and 3.1 were fundamental in this transition for us because with their new powerful features, they allowed us to move a lot of operations that were done with custom SQL or Python code into operations that are now SDMX native, like using representation maps. We were able to transform very easily time representations with regular expressions and substring mappings. We were able to perform very expressive operations. And also series constraints were fundamental in our case because across pretty much all domains, we have constraints that do not apply to single dimensions, but to combinations of codes across dimensions, where also the time is a factor. And on the data modeling side, we're also planning to apply constraints on the DSD, which are one of the latest innovations in SDMX. And where SDMX plays a role in the pipeline, well, of course, the first thing is to create the structures to describe the data. So we create DSDs and code lists to describe the data at all stages of the pipeline. Then we define the transformation rules to move the data from one stage of the pipeline to the other one. And we always keep an eye on data harmonization, which allows us to use mostly code lists and representation maps across different domains. And in this way, we managed to have SDMX not only as a metadata repository, but also as a process repository. And it also allows us to coordinate very efficiently between teams, because now people can work on SDMX structures, unlike working on code, which is much more difficult, mostly for people who are not very used to work with code. And so it offers us many practical benefits for internal data management. It allows us to trace the data because we store the data at each stage of the pipeline. People can cooperate better because we are now using SDMX structures and not custom code. Of course, for international reporting, now we align with SDMX and people are able to use all the SDMX environment that has been put in place by all the many international organizations. And of course, for end users, now they're able to download the data, do all the custom operations they want. And it's also very easy to navigate SDMX structures. First, just before the end, I would like to thank our OECD colleagues, which helped us with some great insights and inspired us to begin this route. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so we have a new word, SDMX native. Okay, so turning to our last speaker of the morning, I'd like to welcome Toki Fandanesera from Madagascar, and he'll be talking about implementing SDMX and .stat suite in Madagascar's education sector. So, Toki, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tuki from Ministry of National Education in Madagascar. I'm very pleased to share with you how Madagascar implement STMX and .stat suite in education sector. Let's talk about the context. Before our ministry, there is not a platform for dissemination for data. We have a website, but there is not include the data. The website is limited to the announcement and the event. So the problem is data was sharing upon request. When people need data, they have to come on our office to request the data or to request by email. Or this is a disadvantage of how we sharing data before. The data is limited. There is a lack of transparency and time loss because people need to come to our office to request data. And there is unequal access data for the people. To solve this, to solve the problem, this is the key action. The UNESCO help the Madagascar team. The UNESCO proposed to use STMX, and we have followed the course on the website on STMX, the STMX for beginner, STMX vocabulary, and the STMX for data producer. Also, an expert from OECD come to Madagascar to help us to training and grade for using matrix generator and all STMX artifacts. And third, an expert from ILO, he came to Madagascar to help us how implementing the .stat suite lifecycle manager in our server. Now, this is the impact value of implementing .stat suite. Now, the dissemination indicator is accessible in the platform, faster decision making, interoperability with international standard, and time saving. Now people don't need to come to office to request the data. Just they visit the platform. In work, we divide in three team. One team, the first team is who we calculate the indicator. The second team who transform the indicator into STMX file, STMX CSV. And the third team is the IT team who make sure the lifecycle manager. Now, conclusion. And the next step is to ensure the platform is regularity updated with validated indicator and promote to the platform to other department. At the moment, all indicator is especially for indicator in our department. But in next step, we ensure to promote the all other department to use STMX and our platform. So, on conclusion, the area that UNESCO is a turning point on Madagascar education sector to use how manage the data. Thank you, everyone. This is very
Merci, Toko. So I think that's an interesting example because we see SDMX now spreading beyond NSOs and central banks and actually moving into ministries, which I think is a very healthy sign. Okay, so now we have time for more questions. The floor is open. Jonathan, Edgardo, and the lady up here. Sorry, I don't know your name. And the gentleman here. So we've quite a few questions. Do we have microphones? We do. Okay, so let's start with the lady here.
Hi, my name is Karina from UNICEF. My question is on the presentation on Open SDG, specifically relating to the discussions from yesterday. In the last slide, there was a reference to being a single source of truth, but does that translate to when a user is accessing this information through an LLM or any natural language processing model, so that you're not going directly to the platform, but you're using some other access mechanism? Does the truth still translate?
Okay, so we'll hoover up the questions and then so Jonathan.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for the presentation. Really good to see the advancement on OpenSDG integration. One for Jeffrey. It was good to see also you mentioned about the user feedback loop. So I'm just wondering, are you planning to include also internal users, the data producers in that feedback loop? And how practically are you going about, what steps are you taking to actually implement that process? And on the same sort of presentation, but for Abdullah, on your point that you mentioned, I suppose, I mean, dissemination is quite easy in terms of like the process, and interfaces are quite easy, but the more challenging part, I think, as we discussed, was the sort of data modeling side of things. So how do you see this, you know, to model national accounts, for example, to have an Explorer or an open SDG type approach? Thank you.
So the gentleman behind. Okay.
Thank you for all the presenters. I have two questions for the colleagues from FAO. The first one is in your effort for harmonizing multiple domains, are you using one single consent scheme or multiple consent scheme, and which criteria you use for this main data governance decision? And the second question is, you said that you are using some features of SDMX 3.0, and I really celebrate that because it's time to start using SDMX 3.0. And my question is whether you have modeled any DSDs using the multiple measure feature for aggregate data. That could be something really new, because that would change our minds and stop using this single measure approach and start thinking of multiple columns like traditional has been. So that could be very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the gentleman just there.
Thank you. It's also from IO that my question is for our colleagues from FAO, that kind of aligned with what Edgardo asked the questions, is that because you presented that you modeling several different domains, and the nature of these data sets are quite different, like from the many dimensions, the SDGs, if you're talking about global DSDs, or to the very simplified DSD structure. So could you elaborate a little bit when dealing with such a varied nature of the data set, like what kind of challenges that you have experienced, especially in terms of the size of the data set and the performance, and so how you balance these challenges? Thank you.
So,
yeah, good morning. My question is on FAO. In your presentation, you have shown the data quality framework where you are mentioned three dimensions. So timeliness and consistency, these are some of the important dimensions generally all the central bank or any other organization generally consider for their data quality assessment framework. So I've seen only three. Is there any specific reason? I just know, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Sutong from ILO as well. The same. I have a question also for FAO. It's regarding the the where you have the innovation with the 3.0. I'm wondering that especially when you're dealing with the representation map, what kind of packages or like solutions that you're using right now? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll stop here for a moment. And just before we do, I have a question for Toki. You mentioned at the end that other ministries were now interested. So I'm just wondering, how is that happening? Are you actively promoting SDMX with your other ministries, or why are they interested? So let me turn to UK, Kenya, UNSD first, and then we'll probably have to spend a bit of time with ILO or with FAO, and then we'll come back to Toki.
Yeah, okay, so thank you for your questions, and let me start. Regarding single source of the truth, well, this is basically what it's all about. The data, in the case of this setup represented in Kenya and other African countries, is that the data is published at an API, and then any number of front ends can be installed over it. Anyone can feed that data to an LLM. This is what the single source of the truth is all about. You have one data, you have the data published once, reused at any number of dissemination platforms. However, what is very important in this aspect is that you have dissemination platforms like .stat, which are fantastic and which we have already seen many times mentioned today. But there is still a lot of space for dissemination platforms customized for a specific subject matter domain. .stat is a data warehouse. The purpose of Data Explorer is to bring many data sets together, make them easy, or make it easier to basically cross-analyze them, to put them together, and they're fantastic for that. What you have in OpenSDG is the icons for the goals, is the user appeal. It's aware of the SDGs, aware of the goals, aware of its specifics, and it actually can hide many of the complexities of the underlying data structure, which is very relevant in 2.1. Because if you try to use the SDG dataset in .stat Data Explorer, in the Data Explorer, it will not look very good. It's very multidimensional. But when you use a dissemination platform, you can hide that complexity. That's one. Jonathan, absolutely. Data modeling is the most difficult part, and in SDMX 2.1, it's already difficult. The SDG DSD doesn't make it any easier. However, when it comes to national, but if we did it for the SDGs, then you can do it for national accounts. That's one. Second, SDMX 3.0 and 3.1 make it much easier to create customizable versions of global data structures. And I think that SNA 2025, it opens up an incredible opportunity to go that way, to have data sets reported through .stat, for example, and then visualized both in Data Explorer and in a macroeconomic, like national accounts, balance of payments, foreign direct investment, specific dissemination platforms with a much better user appeal because they know the context. They can contextualize that data.
So thank you for your question. I want to address your question. So first of all, whatever you're doing here is not something that is standing alone. It's part of a bigger strategy on the development of statistics. And one of the items in that strategy is about user engagement. And we actually have a strategy on how we engage our users. And these platforms are coming from feedback that we receive from our users in terms of the challenges they are facing on our platform. So the first thing we have done as part of the user engagement strategy is, first of all, to bring our stakeholders together and actually get their feedback about the platforms. And one of the feedback that we got is about developing a user guide, which we've actually developed, and actually having a way to communicate. If you're on the platform and you have a challenge, we have designed a way through NS on how you can give feedback in terms of whether there are challenges, areas that we need to improve on. And we would be having these regular meetings because we do the update for the SDGs annually, and our stakeholders are part of it. So from the strategy and the digitization part and even the feedback loops, I think those are some of the strategies we are employing to ensure that the feedback we get from both the producers and the users is actually implemented. And that's why we have actually delayed in launching the platform, because we're actually implementing some of the feedback we got from our users. And I think going forward, we'll still be engaging them in terms of how sufficient it is and how we can improve it to fit their needs. Thank you.
Toki?
Yeah. In Madagascar, we are the first institution who use STMX, the educational sector. So we will promote the platform in other institutions to use the platform. And also we use collect all data from other departments to populate our platform. Okay.
Very good. Now FAO, the people everybody wants to hear from.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So the first one about the harmonization and the concept scheme. Yes, we try it as much as possible to have one, let's say, cross-domain, internal cross-domain concept scheme. But whenever, because we want also to leave the domain to have to have their own specificity, we also have a concept scheme used for each domain. So we are still in this phase of harmonization. So hopefully at one point we will reduce as much as possible this number, but yes, yeah. For the SDMX 3.0, I will leave Daniele, but maybe I can jump on the challenges for of the modeling and the performance. It's one of the main concerns now for FAO, the performance of the platform, and it's also there is a huge discussion and coordination with FAO with the OECD, sorry, to try as much as possible to make the platform usable for the user. In this phase, we keep the line of that the modeling part will not be affected or will not be concerned by the performance of the platform. So, for instance, the fishery, that's true. We needed to keep this long classification, which require long dimensions, and also the use of HCL now for the user, and that affects the performance of the platform. But yeah, we have our IT guys that are here. In case you need more detail, you can also discuss with Sergio. I'm sure he will be happy to provide you more detail on that. Then we had the question on the framework. You're right. We picked it only 3 of the long list of framework. It's a more detailed framework, of course. First, because of the time that we had it for the presentation, and also because it was the most relevant for the work that we did to present you. I mean, for the pipeline, the link between the modeling and the pipeline. But the framework is also composed of timeliness, relevance, and I mean, we can share with you the FAO framework if you want, if you're interested. And the 2 last question, maybe do you want to reply and then?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the question about the SDMX 3.0 features, and especially the multi-measure DSDs. We use multi-measure DSDs, but mostly for internal data representation to represent the data that we get from the different data sources. But then we usually unpivot the data to have only one measure still, because the supporting technologies, they mostly support only one measure. But I think there are some domains that might be suitable for modeling using a multi-measure. About other 3.0 innovations, what packages or innovations are we employing? We are trying to rely on the FMR mapping feature, and also for bigger data sets, the OECD developed a package that allows you to map an SDMX CSV data using a structure map. And for some other operations, we read the SDMX structures using PySDMX, then we parse the structures we get from PySDMX, and I read the rules inside the PyDs, inside the structures, and I apply them to the data frames. Yeah, so it's a multiple-sided approach. Since structure maps are among the harder things to implement in a custom way, it's nice to rely on some external technologies like the OECD Python package or the FMR mapping feature. Yeah.
Okay, we've a request for a few more questions, but I'm going to reject them. I think it's time for.
Sorry, Steve. No, because I remember that you had also a second question about the use of the dimension constraint. And I mean, just briefly, no, we are not currently using this constraint in our modelization, but we are really looking forward to use it mostly for the DSD, the SDG DSD that has a long list of dimensions. That will be very useful. Sorry.
Okay, so for those of you who have more questions, just reach out to the speakers directly. I think a lot of you probably need coffee at this stage. So look, we've had a great morning from the South Pacific to Africa, across to Europe. We've seen how SDMX has been implemented in action. We've heard the importance of data modeling, and I think we've really heard the importance of capacity building. So with that, we'll see you all back here at 11 o'clock. Thank you.